Hey, Care Partners, Teresa Youngstrom here. Hey, so great to see you again today. We've got some great information loaded up for you today. I tell you what, I was with a new family just this afternoon, and guess what their challenges are? Finding caregivers. First of all, to realize that when you're caring for someone that has brain change and memory challenges, we have to recognize that it is going to be progressive and they're going to continue to decline and it's terminal, and we don't like to think about that, but so is life. But so I don't want to give you a Debbie Downer right from the get go, but we do have to plan. We have to plan. We can't just coast and hope everything will be just fine if we stay at, this pace right here. So, first, when we talk about getting extra care in the home, just know that everybody will need to bring in care or their person will go to a community and get more help that way. But you can't go it alone. Listen, statistically speaking, that takes people down. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you're going to get sick. They say that more than half of the caregivers that go it alone when they're caring for somebody with brain change, you know what? They die before their person they're caring for. What? I know, crazy stats, but let's recognize what the facts are. And I just want you to know that we can't go it alone. And so you will eventually need to bring in help. And still, you may end up going to a community. We kind of have to make good choices all along the way. So let's talk first about if we're going to bring in care, where in the world do we find great caregivers? I would start with your calendar and recognize when do we need to start adding in? When can our person not be alone? Or when do they seem to be bored and need an activity or need to go somewhere, go shopping, go get their hair done? What does the calendar look like for your individual? And this will change. This is something you'll be updating every 4 weeks, every 8 weeks, every 12 weeks. It kind of depends on how your person changes with their brain failure. So, what we did with my mom was we ironed out when my dad was going to be there, when my dad couldn't be there, when different siblings. We looked at our personal resources. We were really blessed. 8 children, only one was out of state. And so there was a lot of help right there. But not everybody has that. But still, start with a calendar. Let's start marking in when maybe at this point in time with your loved one, we just someone needs to stop by once a day. It starts early with a phone call. Usually it's just checking on mom, checking on dad. But then maybe when somebody needs to stop in and just make sure everything's okay and they've got food in the house but it might change again. And maybe they're not driving any longer. So someone needs to stop by to take them to appointments and someone needs to help them with grocery shopping, going to the doctor. And what if there are pets involved? All that needs to be considered. But I'm really a huge advocate for looking at the resources we have that do not have to be paid for initially. And so I had siblings. Believe it or not, there were some cousins who stepped forward and said, "Hey, we'll come sit with your mom and do a puzzle or, watch the bird feeders or whatever." You've got a lot of friends and family members that are afraid too, because they're not sure. But frequently in the middle of the day, your person, it's not like you're asking them to come in to shower, mom or dad, or, something like that. Basically, they just need some entertainment, maybe just some companionship, maybe they still can go for a walk, maybe a drive is really nice too. So look at the resources you have. Look at your place of worship. There are probably some people that have known your mom or dad for years and years and years and would love to be part of the solution for you and would love to come in and spend some time. You might have a neighbor. There could be grandchildren who would be interested in spending time with grandma or grandpa. And so look at your resources and then identify the hours, the areas where you might need to hire help. Initially, with my mom, we were hiring help just a couple of hours, couple of times a week. It started off with someone, my dad really didn't want the children to come in and do their laundry or change their sheets and things. And so he utilized a caregiver for that. So it started off one caregiver just a couple times a week, but it will grow. and it will increase. And so before you knew it, then he needed help in the evening getting mom to bed. Um, this family today, the husband still works, and so they have to figure that out. Do they take mom to work with him? But she doesn't really love that, and some days he's out late. And so talking about when do we need caregivers to come in for her best situation, because we really have to consider the person living with brain change, and is being out after hours good for them? Remember, we talk about routine, 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 and the best thing we can do is stick to their routine. Now, this family had recently moved mom into what might be a safer home, a smaller ranch home, less to care for, no steps. But trust me, changing their place of location can be very, 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 did I say enough? Very, very challenging for your person living with brain change. And because typically the short term memory is damaged, and so they're not putting new information into the long term, and therefore they're waking up every morning with, where am I? And that's really hard. And where's the bathroom? And where's the coffee maker? And those sort of things. So in hindsight, I might have advised them to bring in care and in the older home for a while and see how we do. But it had already happened. She's in a new place. And so right now we were working on how to bring in help and what were some great ideas on help. And like I said, look to your family, look to your neighbors, look to your place of worship. And then do we need to hire caregivers? And what does that look like? So hiring caregivers, there are agencies out there to hire caregivers, like, say, for example, care.com. Care.com is a big organization. You can find someone to watch your snake, your guinea pig, your mom. It's just wild. Tutor your child. I think they do tutoring now too. So it's a wide variety of things. You can put in a lot of your criteria of what you're looking for. I mean, is your person in a wheelchair, or is your person ambulatory? Do they need to know how to do showering, or are we just looking for some companionship and someone who's going to sit with mom, make her coffee, and fix her lunch, something like that, go for a walk? And so you can put in the criteria of how many skills this person needs to have. But it's time consuming. And so just let me tell you, resource or look into more people than you think you're going to need, and then you basically have to interview these people. And I would interview people at a local coffee shop, Starbucks or something, and I would meet them there, and they would have their resume. I would already have looked at their information online to think they might be a good candidate. Make sure they live within, 20, 30 minutes. You hire someone who lives 45 minutes, it's not going to last. Trust me, they get tired of driving that distance and it will not last. So just don't go there. Find someone who lives close, and it's convenient. And then you have to have them bring references for you. You need to, maybe do a background check. Some will, some won't, but that's an option, background check. So when it comes to hiring on your own, there are pros and cons. The cons are it's time consuming. There's a lot of legwork. You need to go meet these folks. You need to check their references and see, call people that they've cared for in the past. And was it a good experience? What did you like? What did you didn't like? Anything we should be aware of? How long were they with you? And how was that experience? Um, and then once you decide to bring them into your home, there's a whole orientation of what you want them to do. And I like to have a spiral notebook and have them make notes. And in the column, maybe let me know if they move their bowels, make sure there's a check mark, they have their medicines, and anything unusual. I like them to write out what happened through the day, what activities did you accomplish, and what you didn't get done. It's okay to have a list for these people, a list of things for them to do. The family I was with today were kind of surprised that they couldn't ask the caregiver to maybe fold a load of towels or put the clothes in the dryer, or, can they do a few dishes or sweep a kitchen floor? All those things are reasonable, especially if your person is watching TV for a minute or if they're asleep taking their nap. So we have the best caregivers in the whole world, but it did start with me going to care.com and finding the initial person. Now, here's a tip, is that most great caregivers know other great caregivers, and we were able to get a couple of great caregivers that way. And I would say most of the caregivers that I hired for my parents went very well. There's only one gal that I can remember. Um, there was only one gal that just plain no-showed one day. And, we were super respectful to them and expected that in return, that if they were going to be sick, they'd let us know, they'd call off. But that's one of the negatives with just hiring people privately is if they call off, then there's no one coming. Where if you were with an agency, you would have other options. We'll talk about that in a second. But just hiring privately, you have the same caregiver, so there's continuity of care, and that's really, really nice for your mom or your dad to have, or your spouse to have that same familiar person coming in. Very, very important. You also are going to train them up. And you've listened to me long enough. You know a lot of great techniques on how to approach from the front, accept and agree, validate their position, and go with the flow, get on their team. And don't use words like, why can't you remember? Or no, 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 don't do that. And we try and keep things very positive and lighthearted. And so you will be training them up in the ways and the needs of your loved one. And that's okay. Now, if we decide to go, and it's also cheaper than going with an agency. One of the downsides is, there's no backup if they call off sick. And is there liability? What if they got hurt on your property? It's a good question. And then you have, maybe if you're going to need help, you go the agency route. So there are gazillion agencies around. It's worth asking around and getting references for those. It's okay to have a couple of different agencies come to your home and interview them. Absolutely. This is your loved one that they're going to be caring for. And we need to know things. Typically, those type of agencies will have plenty of employees, we hope. And so if someone calls off, they should be able to send a backup person. The downside is frequently you have too many different people, and that's very confusing for your loved one. So the continuity of care sometimes is not as great with an agency. You're definitely going to pay more, maybe twice as much, up to twice as much. They may have minimum hours, where with you privately hiring somebody, you guys might come up with a really great schedule that serves both your needs, and there's no minimum requirement. But with an agency, frequently it's a 3 or 4 hour minimum, and maybe you just need someone to be with her for an hour while you ran out to the grocery, but you're going to end up paying for 3, 4 hours. And so make good use of your time. That's what I want to tell you. So that's just one of the differences between hired privately and going with an agency. The agency should background check and blood test, drug test all their employees. And so those things should be free and clear. They should have all that done for you. And they should be training up these caregivers in a way that they understand dementia, they understand good care, they understand hygiene issues, and, just how to be respectful, how to keep their phone out of sight, out of mind. Okay. So just some pros and cons of using an agency to find a caregiver. But they are more expensive for sure. And like I said, sometimes there's a lot of different caregivers that come and go during that time. Sometimes, though, the agency might have nurses on staff. Maybe they even have a social worker on staff, something like that. And those can be an asset too. I think whoever you hire to come in and help, whatever type of caregiver, it's good to have a schedule of how you'd like the day to go. Now, remember, we're talking about brain change. And so I always recommend you have a list of things to do, but the list goes where? In the back pocket. That's right, because you just don't know how the day is going to go. And the last thing we want to do is act like we have to, like the agenda is more important than your loved one, because it's not. I mean, I like to have a list. I have a list every day of stuff that I do. And at the end of the day, I'm moving what I didn't get done to the next spot. And that's just how I stay organized. So I think it's great that they have a list of things, that these are the goals that we're going to try and do today. And I think it should include, if it does, it may include hygiene issues. It may include some cleaning things. It should include activities. And but the priority is your loved one. all the time, every day. So whether you get any hygiene needs taken care of, if they're happy, that is the priority. Do we get it? Yeah, but the cool thing is when you're caring for people in a community and say you're the caregiver and you have 8 patients to care for, you've got 8 people in the next hour and a half to get up, dress, change, wash the face and hands, and get them to the breakfast room. What? That is hard. But when we're caring for people individually at home, listen, no schedule needs to be like that. And so we roll. So if the goal is in the morning we get the hygiene done because that's when she's usually in her best mood to do the hygiene, um, but this particular day, just she doesn't seem like things are going well in that direction. And who knows? She could have a stomach upset and she can't communicate that to you. But we roll, right? You're at home. Maybe you've got 4 hours, maybe you have 8 hours with this individual. We can certainly be flexible. So don't be one of those hardcore caregivers or hardcore on your caregiver saying that shower has to be done, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, let's make sure your person is doing well and that they're happy too with how this is going. There's no reason to fight your way through care. Does that make sense? I mean, listen, they remember how we make them feel. And if we're upsetting them every time we get near that shower, that's not going to go well. And then maybe, who knows, guys, maybe the showers are over. What's that? Did I say that out loud? Yeah, there comes a point where the shower can be done. We're not showering anymore. We're washing up. And guess what? It's okay. You will survive. You'll live. Um, I know with my mom, with her disability, with her needing a Hoyer lift and all that stuff, yeah, there was no shower. If she was in a community, they might have had something that you could lift her into, whatever. But at home, no. We were doing bed baths, and you would start the bed bath, and if you got to a certain point and she just wasn't, just the mood wasn't great, or her attitude wasn't great, or she just wasn't feeling great, then it was like, okay, be done. And after the first nap, we can try and pick it up where we were and go on with it. So be flexible. All right, if you're going to be there several hours, you don't have to crush it in the first hour. All right. Let's really care for people like we love them with great respect and maintaining their dignity at all times. And so that can mean changing up your plans, or it may be that you intended to get this or that done, but you know what? It's going to bounce over till tomorrow because it just didn't fit into the plan for today. And I want you to be flexible and I want you to be okay with that. All right. So work closely with your caregivers. Communicate often and frequently. We have, now that we're going through this with my dad, we have a group text with the caregivers, and so great because their insight is so good and they have great ideas. And it's fun that certain ones like cook better than others. Some of them clean better. Some of them, are better with activities. And so we have just a wealth of knowledge and care in these individuals to tap into. And it's just a great relationship. We communicate well with each other, and we're flexible. So when they need off, we'll cover the shift. And when we're desperate for a shift, they'll step in and help. And so that's the type of relationship I hope you can have with your caregivers, and just realize that care will increase as your person declines. And eventually some people, you have to watch the balance of all of it, and it can get out of balance. And if it gets out of balance and you aren't getting any sleep, and you're caring for the grandkids during the day and taking care of dad at night and all of that, don't let it take you down. We probably need to start considering your plan B. And plan B would be looking at a community. Now, just like there are companies that'll help you find great caregivers, there are companies that'll be your care manager if the kids are out of town. Like in our situation, I'm in town with my parents, and so are most of my siblings. But if we were all out of town, which happens these days as we are moving further and further away from home, there are geriatric care managers that you could maybe find in your town where your mom lives, and she could be that nurse that's daughter that's not in town and could help with things. They frequently will hire private duty if you need it and supervise that. They will do home visits. They can take mom to her doctor's appointment. Really great. And so they can be an extra person caring. They can really help on your team. It's usually an hourly rate thing. But I think they're worth their weight in gold if you all are out of town and someone needs to have eyes on mom and be stopping by to check on her. And then they can hire in the private duty as you need it too. So I think that's really, really great. But knowing the next step, it takes time to find a great community to place your mom and dad, and you don't want to do that rapidly. You don't want to do that on the fly. You don't want to do that after, dad's been caring for her, but now dad's had a stroke and he's in ICU and you're having to find something for mom. Okay, craziness. So stop right now and decide you're going to go ahead in the next 4 weeks and find the plan B for your loved one who's struggling. Go look at places. There are companies to help you find the best location. I tell you, I had a family call me and they had been at the hospital with their mom and she needed to go to a long-term community and was skilled. And they handed them a 4-page um, stapled together pamphlet. And each one of those pages must have had 20 to 25 retirement communities on it. Now, how in the world are you going to pick something out of that? It's ridiculous. So there are companies like Oasis Senior Advisors around. There are other companies that will help you with placement. And guess what? These companies have their finger on the pulse of these communities. They know. They know who's doing well and who's not. They know who the state has been in recently and fined them for certain things that were wrong. They know who just was purchased by a new ownership and all the old staff is gone and all the new staff is in there and they've got a little chaos on their hands for a while. That isn't where you want to put your mom. Okay. But they know the places that are doing well. And regardless of whether they are the latest and greatest flashing lights, but it may be the best place for your mom or dad to peacefully, live in their last season. So just be on the lookout for companies like that that'll help you with placement, companies that will help you with private duty. Fact is, there's no real guarantee that any of it's going to be great. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Transitioning a person into care is hard. I know I've said that before. Um, but and whether we include your person in the decision making of the finding the retirement community has a lot to do with where they are on their journey with brain change and whether that would be a good idea or a very poor idea. There are times when we make up a story that there's mold in the house and we have to get out for a month, and that we need to get an apartment for mom for a month and let her caregivers go with her. I would definitely have caregivers already caring for her at home that she's familiar with and loves. And then if she needs to go to a community, let those caregivers go with her and help her with the layout of the new community, help her feel safe and start learning the lay of the land so she knows where the dining room is and the activity room and those things. It just will try and make this transition as good as it can be. Okay. By positioning her to win. That's the word I'm looking for. Try and position mom to win when it comes to moving her into a community. Because those changes, listen, those are really, really hard. When I was thinking about having care in the home, though, the family I talked with today, they said the caregiver's there, mom's there 4 hours. They kind of look at each other and mom doesn't really want this person in her space. And the caregiver really is just on her phone. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. We're not going to do that. I said, first of all, let's just decide phones are going to be out of sight. All right. When they're caring for your mom. And the goal is your mom's care. And so we need to have activities there to do. So this particular woman today, we decided she used to cook a lot. And so we're going to let the caregiver do some simple cake mixes, brownie mixes, cornbread mixes, things like that, and be able to have mom, stir and pour and mix and those things. She has those physical abilities. And so what activities can you plan? There can be art type activities where they could paint something. There can be activities. I mean, everybody, knows about doing a puzzle or something like that. But today we talked about this person used to garden a lot. And so they're thinking about putting in some raised garden beds so that mom could actually go out there and get her hands dirty in the dirt and plant some flowers, plant some vegetables, watch some things grow and be able to do some real activities. Sitting in front of the TV, that's just not life. It's not. And if you're paying, whatever, 30, $40 an hour, whatever it is in your area, for someone to be there, hey, let's plan some activities to do while they're there. And also, like I said, it's okay to ask them to maybe wash a couple of dishes, sweep a kitchen floor, whatever that might be, wipe down a bathroom. It's okay. All right. We're not asking too much and you're paying a fortune. I mean, I had one family actually cross the line on that. They wanted the caregiver to come in and clean all the windows inside and out on the house. And I had to go back and explain to them that, geez, guys, that's not appropriate. I think the husband thought that the rate was really good to get someone to clean all the windows in their home. And I'm like, okay, time out. That's not what this is about. This is about caring for your loved one. This isn't about getting your house clean. So his goals were different than what the agency was really set up to do. I was working for that agency at the time. Had to kind of explain to him that this isn't exactly what we do. You can hire someone to clean windows if you want to. You're probably going to pay a lot more. But yeah, but light housekeeping, hygiene needs, nutrition, preparing a little meal, making some cookies, you know what? All that's okay. And you can start to settle into what really makes mom happy, what really brings her joy, and what she doesn't like. And the things she doesn't like, make a list of that so we don't go there again. But be willing to be flexible. And so bringing in private duty care, bringing in family caregivers, um, it's a part of it. And as they decline, you will need more help. Um, and so we got to cross the bridge of, do you live in town? Are you going to be able to hire and fire these people? Hopefully just hire. Do you live out of town? You need a care manager and you need to talk to a company about your plan B. So you have that lined up should something happen and you need to transition into that setting. Okay. And the thing is, the great places out there, guys, they typically have waiting lists. And so you need to get on the waiting list. Now, that doesn't mean if you come to the top of the list that you have to move her right then, because maybe she's doing great and you don't really need to move her right then, but you just get put back on the list. All right. But then better places in town, you'll learn this early on. Once you go start looking at these places, the nicer places have waiting lists because they're higher in demand. Okay. And so I want you to know about that. And I like utilizing the companies that help with placement. You just want to make sure they're not just sending everybody to one place and that one place is sending everybody that, like that I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine thing. Yeah, we're not playing that game. We really want someone who will personalize and look for the location that's great for us, the community has the resources that we need, whether they have memory care, don't have memory care, blah, 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 or independent living for the other spouse. Okay. So caregiving, it's a part of it. We're going to have to increase care. It may increase eventually to 24/7, but that's when we'll have to make a decision whether we afford that at home or whether it's time to go to plan B. All right. I know that guys that this season can be difficult, but it doesn't have to be terrible. Just go ahead and take some good steps and also recognize that not all of us are wired to be caregivers. Okay. Not all of us are wired to be caregivers. Some of you are better managers, right? I'm the old nurse. I'll be the caregiver. I can change the diaper and give the bath. But some of you are wired for the paperwork, the hiring, the interviewing, the background check, and all that stuff. And that's okay. So do that. Don't do the job that is uncomfortable because it'll be uncomfortable for everybody. All right. All right. That's enough information for today, guys. I love sharing with you. I hope that you will continue to watch our videos, that you will like and share and subscribe so that we can keep getting this information further and further out around the world. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I know that you're doing a great job. Hang in there. I know it's hard, but I also know it's a season. And so buck up and do it for the season. You can do this, okay? You got this.